Ukraine says a Russian attack on the southern city of Mykolaiv has killed at least 2 people. The military says a missile struck a building housing a food processing facility. There's also warning about possible attacks in at least 5 other regions. Meanwhile, Russia says Ukraine has targeted 4 regions with a series of drone strikes. One of the attacks started a major fire at an oil refinery. President Vladimir Putin has condemned the attacks and says he's still willing to engage in talks with Ukraine, but not with President Zelensky. Well, to discuss all of these latest developments, we have Yulia Shapovalova standing by for us in Moscow. But first, we're going to go to Imran Khan, who is in Kyiv. Imran, President Zelensky has once again accused Putin of prolonging the war. What's brought that on?
Well, he gives a nightly statement that talks about a lot of what's going on. But since Donald Trump took power, this has been slightly shaped by the fact that he's now taking potshots, direct criticisms of Vladimir Putin. It's actually worth reading you the statement. He says basically that Putin is afraid of strong leaders and he's prolonging the conflict. Now, this is very much diplomacy by public statement. There are no diplomatic relations clearly between Moscow and Kyiv. So this is the only real way of getting messages out. And it's a little hint into what Zelensky might be thinking when it comes to negotiations. He's already criticized very clearly the Russian leader, saying that the Russians want to make direct talks with the Americans, but without Ukraine. He says that's a complete non-starter. So ever since Donald Trump took power, a lot of Zelensky's statements now are about negotiations. They're about trying to push the Russian leader into coming to the table. But like I say, no diplomatic relations between the two countries. The US is seen as the broker here, but which particular side they'll be taking, we don't know. There doesn't seem to be a very clear US strategy right now to end the war in Ukraine, although Donald Trump has that 100-day deadline, and we're something like 95 days into that.
OK, thanks so much, Imran. Imran Khan for us in Kyiv. Well, for more, we're going to speak to Yulia Shapovalova, who is in Moscow. And Vladimir Putin has hit back, saying he's willing to talk with Ukraine, but not with Zelensky. I mean, how is that going to work, if at all?
Absolutely. And we hear from Vladimir Putin commenting on the Ukrainian conflict almost every day now. And he expresses his readiness for negotiations with Donald Trump, as well as with the Ukrainian side. But he calls the Ukrainian president illegitimate. So according to Putin, Zelensky has no right to sign any documents now. If he wants to take part in the negotiations, Putin would appoint people who would conduct these negotiations. Talking about Ukraine, President Zelensky also signed a decree back in September 2022 prohibiting his country to negotiate with Vladimir Putin personally. Also, in Putin's latest remarks, he said that when the military confrontation began back in 2022, Moscow offered Kyiv to leave the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and had Kyiv done that, there would have been no war. But instead, Moscow in 2022 received signals from Kyiv that it would fight to the last Ukrainian. And in his opinion, the West persuaded Kyiv to continue the war. And here he said that if the West hadn't supported Ukraine, everything would have ended in a month or 2. But regarding the negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv, the Russian leader once again stated that they would be illegitimate if they were conducted right now.
OK, thank you so much for all of that, Yulia Shapovalova for us in Moscow.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.